It's a toss-up if 2021's biggest story in mining was battery metals or environmental, social, and governance. Andrew Cheatle is Chief Operating Officer at Tanzanian Gold, where he's leading the ESG effort. Previously, he was Executive Director at PDAC. Andrew, welcome back to Kitco.
Michael, it's a pleasure to be back on your side. Thank you.
Looking at last year's M&A, there was definitely a swing to first-tier mining jurisdictions. Was that partly driven by ESG factors, Andrew?
I think in part, Michael, obviously first-tier mining jurisdictions have got a lot of jurisdictions and laws that help with ESG. But for me, the real impact of ESG is more in the frontier developing nations, where mining really can make a difference, both not just to the community, but the nation. And obviously, while it's doing that, reward the investor.
Miners say, look at the local community where the mine is operating, not just the country. Do country assessments matter when you're looking at ESG, Andrew?
That is a great question, Michael, and one we often consider. I'm going to break my answer up into a couple of points on that. I think it is very, very important to look at the local environment in which you operate. And it's indeed one of the reasons why I've stepped back onto the ground. That's where it really matters, is where you are with the company. The investors want to make sure that the governance is in place. Obviously, we don't want to pollute the environment. And of course, we want to positively impact the community and nations where we're working. The second part you asked about is the country rankings, if you like, and the one that the go-to everyone knows, of course, is the Fraser Institute and their annual rankings. I think they have to be understood in the context in which they are developed. I think it'd be very important for other CEOs and executives to participate widely in those surveys so that there's a very large statistical analysis. But they have importance. So if you're an investor in New York and you're not able to get out to the countries, you've got two things. You can listen to me talk about how wonderful, in this particular case, Tanzania is, and it is. And it's a great place to work and operate. But you also would go to the Fraser Institute ranking. I would also say that countries it's not just important to look at the ranking as it is now, but what is the trajectory in those countries? So let's take Ecuador as an example. And you mentioned and you referenced my time at PDAC. We worked along with many other people with Ecuador. Those that have been around a bit longer will remember that Ecuador at one point wasn't favored to go to, whereas now, of course, it's very favorable. And I'd like to suggest that Tanzania is on a similar journey at the moment.
I think the endurance of the Fraser Institute study is obviously we understand countries, we know countries, and then you have the ranking, and then you have the comparison, and then benchmarks. Again, it goes back to miners are emphasizing how important it is to look at the locality, but there's going to be a real challenge in terms of actually kind of quantifying that and actually making comparables between junior X and then junior Y.
Yeah, and it's also how does a junior company operate in that environment? Again, we came into Tanzania at the time. The country wasn't top of the favorite lists, but we found it a wonderful environment to work in. There's been very positive changes within the country, the relationships with governments, a strong chamber of mines, a government that's willing to listen and work with miners. And we very recently, obviously, not only our own investments of over $20 million and activities, we've seen the granting of special mining licenses to Oracle on their project. Barrick Gold have openly stated, after resolving their discussions and disputes with the government, $50 million. And then just in the last week, I believe, or week or two, BHP making a commitment to invest $100 million into Kabanga Nickel. Very rapid.
If you're assessing another company, you are looking to, what would be your checklist for ESG? How would you quantify it?
I think it's very important to look at the reports and see what is the company doing on the ground. I think it's very, we all have to put out very clear presentational material, but what are the metrics on the ground? And as companies get bigger, there are various mechanisms by which to measure companies and to see how they're doing. So, for example, the towards sustainable mining, the TSM of the Mining Association of Canada would be a good one.
What are some of the success stories in ESG space? Who do you benchmark against, Andrew?
That really is a good question. I'm going to answer it this way: like, which companies and websites do I go to? Who do I like to talk with about these things? A past recipient of the PDAC Award on Environmental Matters was Lucara Diamonds. I think what Ira Thomas and her team are doing in Botswana is showing, particularly in the junior space, the smaller mining companies, that small actions can make very big differences where you are. And also linking in the work we're doing to the Sustainable Development Goals is another key theme of mine, and it provides some additional purpose to what we're doing. As many of us may know, that this decade is the decade of action to achieve these goals, which is, for example, alleviation of poverty, number one, or clean drinking water, another one. Where we operate, we can make a difference on that. On the larger scale of things, and who do I follow? And I'm also very privileged to spend time talking with them about it. Is Mark Cutifani and Anglo American. I think what they are doing, reimagining mining for purpose, is very, very fantastic. You'll see them sitting in impact investor meetings. You'll see them also talking about how does mining link into the circular economy. That's something else that's very, very important. And then also Anglo American, through particularly Mark's participation, have been very active with the Development Partner Institute, which talks and understands that mining does sit in this environment where you are working with your local community. You're working and returning, obviously, a profit to your shareholders is very, very important. And of course, if we didn't do that, we couldn't do everything else. But also to recognize that there's a partnership with the nations in which you're in. So the answer to your question there, in short, would be I often look at Lucara Diamonds and see what they're doing, and thought leaderships out of Anglo American.
We appreciate the African examples because we don't hear enough about it. Now, Andrew, you used to be a PDAC executive. The show was moved to June due to COVID. What's that like for an organization to make that type of change?
Well, I think in the case of the PDAC, as everybody knows, it is the global leader. It is the show. Right? It has become the global show. There's a highly talented team of people at the PDAC who put on the convention. Typically, the show would be in the can, as it were. So it's like a movie releases. We saw during COVID, some movies were held back a little bit. Obviously, James Bond is a good example. So it's in the can. It's all being moved to June, and I think maybe the participants might enjoy a little bit of warmer weather for a change.
PDAC with shorts, I've seen, has been on the Twitter feed. Andrew, don't need to tell you that 2021 was tough for the gold sector. GDXJ was down overall. Where do you see the hope when you're talking to other miners? What do you believe is going to be the turnaround for the sector?
And particularly for gold, I think we're going to see the economies globally under strain. I think we're seeing already aspects of inflation coming in, higher commodity prices, particularly in oil. And with that, I think people turn to gold. I think we have millennia of gold being a store of value, and I don't see that changing. Now, we should also remember, I think today, last time I looked at Kitco, actually, today, we're up at around about 1,830 odd dollars per ounce. And so I see us making a good sort of recovery. I think the challenges still remain is the investment dollar. People are offered at the moment into cryptocurrency. We're seeing greater competitiveness in terms of battery metal space, but gold is also part of that. Gold is used in electronics, medicals. And once again, fundamental store of value.
Most underreported story of 2021, Andrew?
Of 2021, most underrated story. I'm going to actually say, I think that's Tanzanian Gold. And excuse me for saying that.
That was into my next and last question, Andrew. So let's talk about Tanzanian Gold. You're ramping up production there. Tell us what's planned for 2022, because you've got some big stories.
Answer, Mike, and thank you for that. But this has been a turnaround story. Many people will know the Buckreef project has been around for about 20 years or so. We've got that into production. We commissioned the first phase of our oxide development. So it's just 360 tons a day out of 1,000 plus. We got that up and running in November. As I'm sitting here in Dar es Salaam, the 2 additional mills that take that up to 1,000 tons a day are sitting offshore here. And we're guiding market to Q2, Q3 for being up at 1,000 tons per day, whilst also building up the knowledge and the feasibility level work and pre-feasibility level work for the main sulfide deposit.
Thank you very much, Andrew. He's Andrew Cheatle, Chief Operating Officer at Tanzanian Gold. Thanks for your time.
Michael, thank you very much. Look forward to meeting you again. Take care.